and even just send me a picture of the completed poster, because that's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. So let's see. Styx. Styx. Oh, I love Styx. Styx was one of those bands that also just sticks with me. Now, part of that, and it's a band that I'll talk about later on, a band called Stryper, Christian hair band, one of my all-time favorite bands. And everyone was comparing Michael Sweet from Stryper's voice to Dennis D. Young from Styx. And they certainly are very, very similar. But Renegade, of course, with Tommy Shaw singing, who's also well-known later for being in the band Damn Yankees. Gosh, this is such an interesting list, and a number of just real one-hit wonders. So Kiss is on the list as a band with their disco hit, I Was Made for Loving You, which was influenced by the fact that Gene Simmons, as a bass player, found the structure of Dancing Queen by ABBA to be just divine, sublime. It was like the best thing he ever heard. Like, wow, that is such an amazingly crafted song. Really putting that song over hard. It's just weird to me to think of Gene Simmons sitting around listening to ABBA, but that's wonderful in of itself. But they, of course, had to get in on the craze, because talk about bands that are ahead of their time as far as understanding marketing and, capitalism. Kiss was in on it from the very beginning. They really got what was happening, how to market it. Okay, now we have to have a movie. Oh, now we're going to take off the makeup. Now we're going to put back on the makeup. And we're going to have a Kiss coffin, Kiss condoms, and all the other things that you can get that are Kiss branded. It's really brilliant. Linda Ronstadt. Man, Earth, Wind & Fire is on here a lot, which is no surprise. Electric Light Orchestra is on here a bunch. Here they are with Don't Bring Me Down, classic. Eddie Rabbitt. Oh, gosh, Eddie Rabbitt, phenomenal. Alice Cooper is on here. And then for the first time showing up, we have Foreigner with Double Vision. Foreigner is going to be one of those bands that is going to be on a number of iterations of Musical Highlander, because they have a couple of contemporaries that I find interesting that in some ways Foreigner has been, I don't know, they get overshadowed by other bands, but I'll just say that I couldn't be more pleased that the lead singer of Foreigner in 2022, has been, I guess, for about 10 years now, is Kelly Hansen, who is the lead singer of a band called Hurricane that was out during the hair band era. And it's just great to see him in a band like Foreigner, because he has the voice for it, and I really enjoy that. Robert Palmer, Bad Case of Loving You, Dr. Doctor, great one. Michael Jackson's Don't Stop Till You Get Enough. Just to think of Michael Jackson in 1979 and what he would become just a few years later. This was that early phase where you're starting to see Michael, the solo artist, really coming into his own. Bob Seger, We've Got Tonight. Wow. What a boring song. I'm not a big Bob Seger fan. It's not bad. I just don't really love it. And then this is what struck me. People have asked me, what is your favorite Van Halen song? And maybe people expect, because I'm, a rocker, right? I like rock music. Like it's going to be Unchained or Panama or Jump or You Really Got Me or something like that. My favorite Van Halen song. And when I saw that this was on the list, again, it made perfect sense to me that this just must have been something that subconsciously has just oozed into my brain. Dance the Night Away is my favorite Van Halen song. I don't know why, other than maybe just some fond memory. I don't know, but I absolutely love that song. So now a little bit of a detour with that. I'm going to do an episode about lead singers and frontmen. I was considering doing that for this episode. But David Lee Roth is an interesting study. I think that many people would say without a doubt he is the greatest or one of the greatest frontmen of all time. A little bit comedian, a little bit vaudeville, a little bit rock and roll. But he somewhat gets dismissed as a singer. However, there was not a study, an article, someone posted something as far as octave ranges for singers. Now, you can have this huge octave range and not necessarily be a traditionally good singer or have the most melodic voice. But David Lee Roth is on the list. I'm trying to remember how many. I know I could look it up, but it's like 4 or 5 octave range, something like that. I don't know. It runs it's pretty high though, because he can go through those really low notes, David Lee Roth, to those little screeches that he does. I'm not going to dare to do it now. I do a similar one that drives my wife and kids crazy when I do it. More annoying than even Dave's. But he really has a dynamic voice. He certainly pushed himself when he was younger, which means it became more difficult to replicate as he got older. But you can't really take that away from him. Who's as good as they were when they were young at anything that they do? There's occasional artists that you go, holy cow, they still do it just like they did when they were young. That is just exceedingly rare, and the people who can do it, kudos to them. But now thinking about Van Halen, just this past year in 2021, the greatest guitar player of all time, was it 2021 or beginning of 2022? Eddie Van Halen, far too young to be gone. Oh gosh, it's been 2 years? No, really? Oh, that can't be possible. Wow. Eddie died October 6th, 2020. Gosh, this whole COVID thing, it just makes time go by at some weird pace. Gosh. Well, October 6th, 2020, Eddie Van Halen. 1955 to October 6th, 2020. Man, age 65 years old. Completely too young. And I think for pretty much anyone of wherever they fall on the spectrum of Generation X, Eddie, either consciously, subconsciously, even tangentially, for the people who aren't necessarily into this kind of music, the Van Halens are just a part of Americana, just a part of who we are. Gosh, just makes me sad to think that Eddie's gone. And it's good to see his son, though, Wolfgang, who obviously was a member of the last few years of Van Halen, is putting out music of his own using the Mammoth title, which is actually the name of Van Halen before they became Van Halen. So I think they were Mammoth when they were being scouted by multiple, management groups and record labels trying to figure out if this was going to be the next band, the next big thing. And Gene Simmons from Kiss, again, talking about Gene Simmons, he was really interested, wanted to sign them, and they opened for them. And ultimately, two of the biggest bands ever to exist. But I'm looking through this whole list in 1979, and it's just really amazing how many of these things have stuck with me. So I don't know about all of you who are listening and you say, well, I don't really relate to any of those songs. I don't know how, because it really is, to me, these are iconic things. Oh gosh, Andy Gibb is on here, the youngest of the Gibb brothers, who apparently, he committed suicide, but because he had a bad breakup with Victoria Principal, who was just like the chick for all the young guys in that time period. I say chick only because it's at the time period. I'm not meaning to be purposely misogynistic, but they had a bad breakup, and apparently that was a big thing that kind of set him off on a bad path. So beyond the music of 1979, I began to look at what other stuff was going on. And I started looking at the movies of 1979. And I tried to break it down into 3 general categories. Movies that I went and saw in the movie theater, movies that I saw shortly after, either on video. My dad was one of the early adopters of home technology, and he had a pretty bad investment in my estimation, because he ended up buying a Betamax machine, which I think became obsolete in like the first year that it came out. But let's see. These are movies that I know for certain that I saw in the movie theater. So the first one is Star Trek: The Motion Picture. Now, I just think the title is so indicative of the time period, because now it would be called Star Trek: The Movie, but it's Star Trek: The Motion Picture, because that's what they were called. They were motion pictures, which, given how far away we were from silent films, and I don't know, it's funny to me to have it called motion picture. But I saw this at a long gone movie theater called the Meredith Twin. So now it's it's called Town Line Square, that whole area, but the Meredith Twin, it's exactly as it sounds. It was two movie theaters side by side, playing whatever the movie of the moment was, and I went and saw Star Trek: The Motion Picture with my dad, one of his best friends. By the way, my dad's two best friends, they're one of them is a nickname, and one of them is his actual name, but his like two best friends were Chip and Dale. Chip and Dale. That is amazing to me that my dad's two best friends were Chip and Dale. And there was no sense of irony. It just was. Chip's real name was Arthur. He went by the nickname Chip, and Dale's name was Dale. But went with my dad, Dale, and Dale's son, Christopher, who was one of my earliest childhood friends. And we apparently got there very, very late because there was no seats available except for the very front row. Now, I am 5 years old. I now have to tilt my head back all the way to watch this movie. Now, it's not a great movie. If you are a Trekkie and you're like, well, yes, it is. It's a great movie. No. The story is subpar at best. But what it did have going for it, similarly to Star Wars, was an amazing opening sequence. And for Trekkies, this is a significant moment because this was the first new realized vision of the Klingons, of what we now know to have like the ridged forehead and it was the new look, a new design. And this is one of the first things you see on the screen. So there's kind of this like great opening sequence where the camera pans and does like a 180 over the ship, really cool perspective, which you couldn't have gotten on the original TV show, on this big, huge screen with all the Dolby sound and this first vision of the Klingons, which were speaking in a Klingon language and subtitles. So again, not exactly what you expect. When you're 5, they have to read subtitles, Klingons. So kind of takes you out of it a little bit when you're leaning over to your dad going, what does that say? What does that say? I have no idea what that says. Anyway, I guess it was kind of cool. I probably fell asleep. I don't remember exactly. I just remember the movie ultimately being pretty boring. But you know what wasn't boring? And this particular character has been in the news a lot lately because everyone's trying to figure out who will be the next 007. I got to be honest, I'm voting for Henry Cavill. Be pretty cool to have the number of characters that he would have. He would have Superman, The Witcher. He would have James Bond. I don't know. That'd be pretty cool. And didn't he do a Mission Impossible movie too? I don't know. I like Henry Cavill. And since he is a Brit, it would kind of make sense that he would be the next 007. I think he has the weight and the gravitas. Although coming off of Daniel Craig, who looks like an absolute killer, maybe it's the wrong direction. Maybe they have to go with someone more rugged. I don't know. But you know who wasn't necessarily rugged? That would be Roger Moore. Look, it's not my fault when I was born. Roger Moore was my Bond for much of my youth and life. I don't count Timothy Dalton. No offense, dude. I think of Timothy Dalton from the Flash Gordon movies more than I do as James Bond. And maybe I should go back and watch them, and I would have a different opinion. And then Pierce Brosnan, because I watched Remington Steele, and he seemed like he was a logical fit. Although I recently listened to a podcast that said that Pierce Brosnan looked too soft. I'm not sure that I buy that. I thought he was a hell of a Bond. But we're talking about 19